Good day, everyone. So one of the powerful things that Nilou provides with her bountiful cores is the fact that her bountiful cores cannot be stolen by the enemies. They cannot trigger Hyper Bloom or Burgeon. And this is so important because if you're running a Hyper Bloom or Burgeon team, the enemies can actually trigger reactions on them and effectively steal like your damage, because the damage that they're going to do by triggering a Hyper Bloom or Burgeon is going to be very small. So let's just get a couple of practical examples to demonstrate this. In the background you will see the base case. In other words, I've got two dendro cores right here, and Shinobu is now going to trigger the Hyper Bloom reaction, and the damage that's being done to Masanori here is about 27k. So this is kind of important. Now what happens when Masanori himself is going to be the one to trigger the cores? What damage will we see? Well, let's get into it. So you can see here I'm applying dendro. I'm now going to apply some hydro. There's a little core that's being created, and now Masanori is going to be the one to trigger the Hyper Bloom, and of course it's going to home in and sort of attack me, and it does about very little damage. So obviously this is not even 5% of the 27,000, and we can obviously confirm this as well by just sort of looking at what happens if that sort of Hyper Bloom hits him instead of us. You'll see it right here. So this is another very good example. We've triggered like the little bloom reaction. There's the little dendro core, and now Masanori is the one triggering the Hyper Bloom, and very funnily enough he hits himself in the back instead of Nehida here, but you can see the damage is pretty small. So if he steals my dendro cores instead of Shinobu triggering it, then yeah, the damage is gonna be lost or wasted. You can also see this if you look at something like La Senora, and basically you'll see what happens. Effectively we've got the dendro here, so Kokomi herself is now going to trigger sort of the bloom reaction. So you'll see it's going to pop up right there, and immediately poof, La Senora just destroys it. So she's the one triggering this reaction, and unfortunately yeah, it just means that I kind of lost. I lost out my reaction. The Burgeon is just doing very pitiful damage. Of course, the fact that it was as big as it is because Nehida effectively like doubles the damage, which is kind of cool. And you might be wondering, but hey, you know, you don't have an Electro unit. How did you trigger it so quickly? Well, basically, Nehida's C1 plus a level 12 sort of on her elemental burst effectively gives you a triggering window which matches perfectly with Kokomi's jellyfish. Thought I might just sort of throw that in, but yeah, so this just gives you a very good practical example of how even if you get these cores, La Senora just eats them up. So what happens instead if we used Nilou? So this is what you'll see in the background. So now we're going to activate the Golden Chalice effect, which will allow all of our cores to be bountiful cores instead. And let's see. So I'm just going to go again, just sort of apply a bit of dendro right here, and you'll see that, hey, my little bountiful cores cannot be sort of eaten up. They cannot be eaten up by La Senora, which means I'm doing the full damage to her, and this is like so cool. So as you can see, we're just hitting her really hard. Of course, we trigger Nehida's E ability, and we trigger, of course, the dendro core. So in total, pretty decent damage as well. This is the power of Nilou. The enemies cannot steal your sort of bountiful cores, and that means you can do more damage than your Hyper Bloom or sort of Burgeon teams. Now in the Spiral Abyss, this is also kind of relevant when you look at these bosses, or like these what do you call it, Black Serpent Knights. So in the background you can see here I'm sort of tagging all of them with Nehida, a quick E. So that's just a tip for all of you. You don't need to hold E here. And now you can see I'm just going to trigger the beauty of the AoE wide Hydra application from Kokomi. I'm going to trigger a bunch of sort of cores. They're not bountiful cores because we haven't used Nilou yet, but what can typically happen on a floor like this is that these little pyro enemies here can trigger Burgeon on all of these, and effectively you've wasted your cores. This happens more often than you might actually believe, and it can happen at a random moment which you did not really intend. So as you can see now, sort of Nilou is back at it, and yeah, yeah, now we are going to start triggering bountiful cores galore, and the enemies are just going to start to sort of be taken out. It is really, really beautiful. Look at this, and no matter what happens here, they cannot steal any of it, and this means that I can beat them quickly and move on to the next wave. So from a very practical perspective, against Thunderbird in the Spiral Biz, against the Thunder Lava Chill in the Spiral Biz, against the Black Serpent Knights in the Spiral Biz, Nilou has an advantage because you cannot take away her bountiful cores, whereas in the other sort of teams, they can be taken away, and I think this might also be a reason why people that are trying to play Hyper Bloom on the first half are struggling a bit, and they might also find themselves struggling a bit more on the second half. So do keep an eye out for this. Ensure that you're faster than the enemy in triggering the reactions. And this is the cool thing about Nilou teams is, well, she's kind of very, very fast at triggering bountiful core explosions. This is just what makes her such a good unit. Absolutely love Nilou and just how she does damage. It's really such a great character. I can't emphasize that enough. Alright, that's it for this lesson. Thanks for watching. Cheers.